the process is actually very simple. There's only 3 calls, web service calls, that you need to make in order to process a list from start to finish. The first call would be upload file. Update quote is the second call, and then CAS, CAS, NCOALink, dupe, and Presort. And then that's it. That processes your file, and your credits, like if you go with the transaction model, you're never charged a transaction for the job at all. So you can upload files and process them, and you're never decremented or charged. The only time you're decremented or charged is when you download something relevant. So you could even go as far as uploading a file, processing it, and then downloading the preview, this preview.csv, which is the first 25 records. That includes your intelligent mail barcode, everything. And you're still not charged. Then when you're ready, you say, oh, this looks great. You can even look at the postage, all that good stuff. Then you say, okay, I want to download the production stuff. Then you can download this Mail.dat.zip, which contains everything, your hard copy documentation, your full service stuff for Postal 1, and your print ready file, with the intelligent mail barcodes and everything. Or you could download them individually, just the print ready CSV or the PDF or, that stuff individually. And you can download as many times as you want. So the first step is, remember there's 3 steps. There's upload file, update quote, which tells us what to do, and then CAS, and to process the list. So the upload file requires these, form data information. One of the form data pieces is the callback URL. If you have a web service on your side, when our processes are finished, we'll make a callback to this URL, and we'll add on to it the job GUID. So when you upload a file, like if I were to take this and using the Postman, just choose a file, and then I were to hit send, give it a second to come up here. Google takes, there we go. I'm given back this number. This is basically the link to this job. And this GUID is what I use throughout the rest of my calls. So when we do the callback, we would append this GUID to the end of your callback. So if you look at the documentation, let me go to callback. And I'll zoom in a little bit. So if you provide the callback, for example, if you provided this, our web service will do a GET call to your web service using that same thing, and then we just simply add on the parameter, the GUID. So then when we do that, you could use that GUID then to download the preview or download the Mail.zip file, which contains everything. So if you really truly want to make it completely automated, and you do support web service callbacks, also known as a webhook, then you should set up your RESTful API on your side, and then we do a callback to your RESTful API, and everything's good. Then you don't have to do any polling. There's an alternate way of to find out where we are in the process by polling, and I'll show you that in a second. So the first step would be to upload a file. That's simple. We've uploaded the file. The second thing that I would recommend doing, which is not required, but I would recommend it, would be a GET quote. So once you've uploaded the file, you do this GET quote. And what that does is it lets you know, first of all, that everything's ready to go. We've got the file, it's ready to go to the next step. We give you the estimated postage cost. So right away, we give you a quote on all classes of mail and all sizes of mail. So we show you the estimated postage that it's an estimation, but it's very close. An estimated postage, and we give you the estimated savings. So for example, if you were to pre-sort this thing as a first-class flat, then your estimated postage would be $1,261. Your estimated savings on that first-class flat would be, you got to find it here, would be $619 in postage. So that's your savings. So if you did, let's say you were going to pre-sort a first class or standard mail letter, that would be your postage on the standard mail letter. Of course, here's your total number of pieces. And then your savings would be $382 in postage. All of that's based on the same size piece going first class. So a standard mail letter versus a first class, non-pre-sorted, that would be your savings on 2,000 pieces. As you can see, your savings on a first class flat is $619. So the get quote is really nice. People love this, especially in a web to print workflow where you're having someone where you want to charge them for the service. It's always nice to know what their savings are so you can justify what you're charging them. So the quote system is really, really cool. So now the next logical step would be to update quote. This one call gives us all the instructions on what you're going to do, after this. So if you're going to do a pre-sort and all that stuff, you can provide, the mailing agent information. You can provide, who you're preparing it for, which may, in your case, be the same. Your permit information. You can also provide your mailer ID in here that you want printed inside of the Intelligent Mail barcode on your printed piece. If we haven't already, we will provide you with the AccuTrace API key. And what happens is when you do a pre-sort, the next step will be to CAS certify and pre-sort it. When the pre-sort is completed, it will automatically push your files up to AccuTrace, so you can have full visibility of your mail. Cool. It'll immediately plot it on a map, so you know where all the mail pieces are going. And so basically, I'll just jump to that. So basically, as soon as the list is pre-sorted, it gets uploaded to your portal so that you get back a job GUID, which would show you, in essence, how many scans you have. It would instantly or immediately populate a map showing you where all the mail pieces are destined and whether or not they have any scans. And then you can drill down on each one of these and see the county level all the way down to the zip, all the way down to the final pieces, and actually see their scans with plotting it on a US map. So you can see where the mail piece travels all the way to its destination with AccuTrace. That's part of everything that you have, and we'll provide you with that information so it gets pushed there automatically. So this update quote is really important. One of the most important parts of this is the field mapping. So I've added these columns here for first name, last name, address, city, state, and zip. It's important that if you use field names other than our default field names, and our default field names are described in that document. So if you go, like when you're looking at this this documentation here, if I go to update quote, you'll see that the data parameters here that we have, there are two examples. One is the JSON example. So if I click this, it gives you, and I would use this at first, it gives you the complete JSON, just the default stuff. It's not nearly all of the JSON values you can use. It's just the most common ones. And then you could copy that and paste it into here. But I'm going to give you the collection which already has it. But in this document, there's also this Excel document to see all the available settings. And if I click this, it'll open up the Excel document, download it so I can open it. And in here shows you the values that you would put, your JSON values. So for example, if you're doing pre-sort class, first class here, you'll know what values you can use for pre-sort class. Here they are. We support periodicals, bound printed matter, mixed weight manifest, everything. But these are the 99% of what you'll do. all sizes. One of the things, and then if we go down to the column mapping, so you can map all your fields, but the only ones we really need mapped are these required ones, like the first name, which could contain your first and last name. But if they're separate, then you should map your first name and last name, or first name, middle name, last name, and then your address. If you have a company name, you should map that because for NCOA purposes. But this is what I wanted to show you is this default. If your field names are these, so in other words, if I open up the sample file here that I uploaded, this sample 01, here's the actual text document. So you see how I'm using address, address 2, first, last, city, state, ST, zip. Well, if I'm using our default field names, address, address 2, ST for state, zip for the zip code, then I don't have to provide in this update quote any field mapping. I can just leave them blank. But if I have, let's say you want to use your own field names. Let's say your field name is not called address. It's called my mailing address 1, right? And let's say this one's called my mailing address 2, and this one's called my city name, or something like that. Then all you do is you use these field names and you map them. So my mailing address 1 would map to the address. You see that? This one right here would map to address 2. This is the single biggest mistake people make, is they have their own field names, which is great. You can use your own field names. But they just upload the file and they expect for us to know where all the fields are. Because you could have, 200 fields. We don't care about any of them, except the address, name and addresses. You don't have to map any of them other than the name and addresses. So if you use our default field names, you can just simply do this. They don't need to be there at all. If you use our default field, so here's a list of all of our default field names. And it tells you what they are, all the way down. Okay? So your name can, like your name values, for example, we support, like if you had a field called, you called it first, like that, our default name, the data within the field could be Belmonte Steve M. That could be one thing. You could have Steve M. Belmonte. You could have Belmonte. Let's see, Mr. Steve M. Could be S. Michael Belmonte Jr. Could be Belmonte Jr. Steve Michael. It could be any of those. And all of that can appear in the name called first. We handle it internally fine. So we know, because depending on how this is typed in, we know that this is the last name because you have the comma. We know in this case this is the last name even though it has a comma because there's a suffix that follows it, and we have another comma, and then the first name and middle name. So we do all of the parsing internally for NCOA. But if you have separate fields, you should also, if you have the information in a separate field, then you should map it. So if it was like this, you should map it like that. So that's simple. That's the biggest mistake people make, is that part of it. Even though the files always have to be .csv, right here, but the file itself could be pipe separated, like that. You could use pipe symbols. It could be tab separated. We have tab characters. But it has to be named .csv. So we use the word pipe, tab, virtually any delimiter but the file name has to be CSV. And you don't upload Excel documents or anything. So I would just make it comma separated since it's a very standard format. Probably be easy enough just to do that. And then you post this update quote. And then, so once I do this, I just get this status okay. And then the next call is going to be to process the list. So I can either do, let's say I want to just CAS certify it and run it through a Presort. So I could just do CAS Presort. If I want to do CAS and also run it through NCOA, I can do that, CAS NCOA Presort. If I want to do duplicate detection, I can add this, and now it'll do CAS NCOA deduping and Presort. So you can do any or all of the above, and I just hit send. So we have in the documentation, you have all the different, so if you wanted to CAS certify, NCOA dedupe, and Presort, there's all your different ways. CAS NCOA dupes Presort, CAS NCOA dupes 01, 02, 03. Here's doing all of it, but with no NCOA. And then here's just CAS certifying, NCOAing, and presorting, no deduping. Here's CAS certifying and presorting. So you have all the calls there, and then here's your different dupes. We've uploaded the file, we updated the quote. I recommend doing get quote so you can know that you got the postage total and everything looks good. Then you get that success true. You do update quote and run it. And then here, if we wanted to know where the status is, where it is in the process, we could do another get quote. And if we did a get quote, we can look for these things called, like if we wanted to, like if we didn't want to wait for the web service callback. If you support callbacks, I recommend using the callback. But even though you're using the callback, you may want to know kind of where it is, like what it's doing for that job in the background, whether it's CAS certifying, NCOAing, deduping, presorting, generating the documentation, generating the intelligent mail barcodes. You may want to know what the status is of where it is. You do that by calling get quote again. So remember, we called get quote over here to get the postage, but we make the same call to get the status. And the status is reported in what's called task name. So all these ones have task underscore, and if we go to the documentation, right here. So this is an alternate method to a callback. So if you want to know if you don't support callbacks, you can just use this to kind of poll, and I would recommend just checking once every 5 seconds or something if you wanted to. And then you will see in the task name, you'll see some of these values. So you'll see whether it's optimizing the database or generating the postal documentation or it's finished. You can also see what it's doing. So the task state, whether it's duplicate detection, you see that, or what it's doing, and then the percentage. Right now we just show 0 or 100%. So there you go. So then you know it's finished, but also because it's finished, we already did the callback. So your web service could have then, through the callback, you could have triggered something like download the preview. So if I go to the next and final step, I can download the preview right here, which gives us the first 25 records. So here's my original fields. So you could have had 100 of those, and we just simply pass them through. And then we added on the additional fields, like the carrier on number, the barcode, the intelligent mail barcode right here, the digits. This is the 20 digits that we add on to or that the barcode is added onto in order to make up the intelligent mail encoded version of, this is the one you print. So you actually print this one using our barcode font. And then here's your container ID, your group ID, the endorsement, and then your sequence number. So here's your sequence number right here, 1, 2, 3. Our RESTful API can also do north-south printing. So if you're running on a postcard and you're printing it 9 up on a sheet, we can create a file. This final file would be 9 up. So you'd see record 1 here, and then record 9 would be down here somewhere. So when you print it, it's printing north-south. And those settings are in here. So in this column, you see all the JSON values and stuff. Here's north-south. So you can set that up to 20 up. And then we generate a 20 up sheet. Also output, like we output it as a comma separated file for you. That this print ready file right here is in comma separated. If you wanted it in a DBase format, you just include this JSON object and say DBF or tab, and we output it as tab or CSV or DBF. By default, it does that. You can also include additional fields, like if you wanted to know the rate of each individual piece, you can include that. And we have a full list of field names that you can include that you may want on the output that we're not giving you. Right now, we just give you the basics, you know, that you absolutely need for a mailing. So you can add, you know, other values there too. And you can add duplicate key values. Like if you wanted to find duplicates and you wanted, let's say you combine mailing lists, you combined two mailing lists, and let's say your name was in both mailing lists, but you don't want to remove duplicates. You don't want your name removed unless it was duplicated in the same, let's say, list ID or something. So you could have, let's two jobs that you merge together. Your name's in both jobs. Let's say you were a seed record or something. You can include that field name, like job ID. So you just do this, add this to your update quote right here. And let's say you had a field name called job ID. Then it would use that field as part of your duplicate detection match and not remove duplicates within jobs. So that would be duplicate, and again, it explains that over here in this last column. So you might want to take some time to go through it. There are some really cool features, like for example, you can filter. So like let's say you run it through an NCOA process. Here's some NCOA filters. This means that you can exclude records, let's say, where they moved and left no forwarding, or moved to a foreign country, or moved out of state. So you can include these JSON values. If you wanted to remove all of those, you just include those in your thing here, and then it would exclude those records from being pre-sorted. So, and that's really cool that you can exclude records, so you have a whole list. And then you can also exclude records from CAS. So for example, let's say a record CAS certifies, but it's vacant. So we know the address is vacant. It's a perfect address, but nobody lives there. Well, you can exclude vacant addresses just by adding this CAS filter like this. And it'll exclude vacant addresses. So basically, that's the whole process. You upload file. I do recommend doing get quote so you know that it's ready, you're ready to move on to the next step, which is update quote, providing all the information we need for pre-sorting. And then you do the process, whether it's CAS pre-sort, CAS NCOA pre-sort, whatever, and then you download. We also have an alternate way to upload a file. So this is uploading a file with these parameters. We have this one called upload file with DQ results. What this does is it's the same as the original upload file. These two are the same, with the exception of we've added, it's the same exact URL. There's no difference. We've just given you more parameters. So you can map the fields ahead of time. That means you map the address fields ahead of time, right here. If you're not using our default field names. If you're using our default field names, you don't need to provide this. You can provide this. Data quality results true. Let me tell you show you what that gives you. So if I select the same file and I hit send, you get back the same, JSON structure, a different GUID. But now when we call get quote, so I'll call get quote over here, you get back this instead of this shorter version. You get back this longer version, which tells you the quality of your list. So now we don't just give you a quote telling you how much the postage is. We actually tell you the quality of the data. So these DQ values right here in the documentation so this is the content if you use that additional parameter. And what that tells you is the quality of your data. So we tell you right off the bat how many records where the address was DPV confirmed for both the primary and the secondary numbers that are absolutely perfect addresses. We also tell you how many addresses are vacant right away without you doing anything else. All of that's free. We don't charge you anything. In other words, everything we've done so far, you don't get charged for until you download something relevant. So if I went to the next step and said, okay, download from that other job the actual CSV, then at that point it's decremented, but you can do that. You can download it as many times as you want. But at that point, you know, you're using something relevant. So that's kind of cool, is now I know for a fact that in this particular list, there are, let's see here, DPV, there are 20 addresses in my list that are vacant. That's where that update quote comes in handy, where I can say, okay, well, I know there's vacant addresses. I don't want to mail to them, so you can include this. Now, you don't need to call the upload file with that extra parameter in order to use this filter. It's just some people want to know right up front the quality of their data. And this gives you the quality of your data. So this indicates right here, this D indicates that there are 11 addresses in my list that are missing a suite number or apartment number, because 11 addresses in my database are high-rise buildings but have no suite numbers when we expected them. We also know with this one that there are 56 addresses in my database that have a suite number that can't be confirmed. And then this one with a Y means that 1,906 records of the 2,000 records are perfect. Of these total, these records are confirmed at every level. So if you added this number right here to these 56 and to the 11, you would have records that would get to their, you know, they would get to their destination. That does include the vacant. Those numbers do include vacant because they're perfect addresses. So it gives you a lot more information than you otherwise would have had by uploading a file. Pretty simple, huh? Upload a file and get the quality of the list. The most important thing is that the file is comma separated. It has a .csv extension. The header of the file right here is very important. And if you don't use our default field names, make sure that you include the mapping either in the alternate update, like if it was called my mailing list, you put it, the name of the field like that. Otherwise, you literally don't need to provide these values at all. So if I was to make this call, I could remove these values and simply add this one. So the only difference between these two calls, you know, you could use this one and just say false, like that. And then when I upload the file, and then I come over here, let's say I do another get quote, and I say get quote, it would return this. If I come back here and say, okay, true, and I upload the file, I get another GUID, then I come to get quote, and I hit go, and it says it's still processing. I hit it again, and it's done. Now I have the full results. So using the data quality true takes another 1 or 2 seconds, depending on how large your list is, but it gives you that information. Otherwise, by not setting this to true or not even providing it, it gives you the quote right away. The other one requires us to go through the records very quickly to confirm them. You could just have as many fields as you want. I would not go over like 200 fields, but to most people that's unlimited. But yeah, so you just provide your field names. We provide it back exactly like it is, and pass them through. Here's a comma separated one with database, first name, last name, middle name, married, age, income, residency, you know, all these fields. And then when we give it back to you, you see how we added on here the barcode. So if you go all the way to the very end, you see how we retained like utilities, expense code, vehicle owned, women owned, and then remember those fields we added? There's the fields we added here. This standard set of field names, we just add to the end of your structure, and this one had like, oh my gosh, if I took, let's see here, dragged it onto here, I'm just moving it, creating an Excel document. So I took that file that had all those fields, I just dropped it into Excel. So here's your header, and it goes, let me move it over here a little bit. So it went all the way to CG. So that means it went to AZ, BZ, CG. So if you add all that together, 52, I don't know, like 60 fields in this database. And then we just simply append on the back end of it. And we retain your field names all the way through.